Hello friends, Srinivas here. Welcome to our channel. And today I'm going to discuss a very interesting topic in Oracle Fusion. And this is IDR or Intelligent Document Recognition. You can call it invoice imaging. And what is IDR and what are the functionality and what are the prerequisites for enabling the IDR in Oracle Fusion? That we are going to discuss now. So let us start. Let us start. So you can see this payable dashboard and the first info tiles you can see here and scan. It is showing scan. So this is nothing but the images. The invoices coming from invoice imaging source. They are visible here. Okay, and this invoice imaging tools or invoice imaging functionality has been introduced in Oracle Fusion. The first info tiles it is dedicated to the scanned images or scanned invoice. The scanned invoice means which are coming from invoice image source. Okay, the supplier will send the scanned invoice copy to a specific email ID, and when the import process will import the invoice to Oracle, so it will be stored in this info tile you can see here. So we'll discuss the complete end-to-end flow for invoice imaging. So let me go to this Excel sheet and show you the flow here, basic flow. So you can see here the basic flow here, the import images, right? It starts from import images. What happens? The Oracle will provide one dedicated email ID. Okay, so when the business get the license for invoice imaging, Oracle provide this tool, or Oracle will enable this tool and share an email ID, dedicated email ID to the business, and the business will share this to the respective suppliers. Okay, and the supplier will send this invoice image to this email ID, and the recognition tool, the seeded inbuilt recognition tool, will recognize the invoice attributes and store this information in imaging web content or imaging web center. And then we can import these invoices from imaging web center and process them for payment. So this is the basic flow here, and I have mentioned here all these steps. So what is IDR invoice? You know the basic flow. Okay. Now setup for IDR options. So setup and maintenance, you can go to Payable, and in Payable you can see here the manage intelligent invoice recognition or manage intelligent document recognition options. So open this setup. So here you can see the invoice image email. So this is the email ID. This is the dedicated email ID shared by Oracle, and when any server, any Oracle Fusion instance is enabled for invoice imaging, you can get this email ID. So it will be visible here. So if it is not enabled, then you cannot see this email ID in certain instances like demo instances. It will not be visible. So only when you have got the license for or it is enabled for invoice imaging, you can see this email ID. So this is the basic setup actually. Here you can see the override default business unit and lot of other setup you can do here, whether like calculate tax during import, like while importing the invoice from image, do you want to calculate tax during the import? Do you want to recognize the tax amount, recognize the freight amount? So as per business requirement, you can enable or disable these options. Recognize line for matched line, recognize line for unmatched line. So based on the requirement, you can enable. But one of the important setup here I can show you. Here select recipient email ID, and after selecting you have to set up your email ID. Okay, so you can set up your email ID for specific business unit. Let me set up my email ID. So I will set up for US1 business unit. Okay, so that means I am working for US1 business unit, and any invoices coming from supplier and there belongs to US1 business unit, I can send these invoices or process these invoices through IDR email ID, right? Get the email ID to send the image. So you have already the email ID, so you can get from the IDR setup. Okay, just copy this email ID, because this email ID we have to share to the respective suppliers so that they can send the invoice to this email ID. And then we have to set up the default org ID profile. Okay, that is also mandatory setup to successfully import invoices from invoice image. So what is the default org ID profile? Let me show you. You can go to manage administrative profile. Manage administrative profile value and select or search for the default org ID. Okay, so here you have to set your user. Okay, so my user is sas.imp. I have to set here, so it is not set here now. So I can set profile value is user. Okay, sas.imp. and US business unit and save it. So this is done. Setup default org ID profile is done, and the next setup is setup lookup for IDR. So search for this lookup, manage payable lookup. Just navigate to manage payable lookup. And search for this profile value. Okay, so this lookup is ORA imaging routing attributes. So basically you have to enable this this attributes or this lookup, so that the purpose of this lookup is to map the value of imaging routing attributes to the business unit. So basically whenever in invoice some specific attributes belong to specific business unit, so this invoice will be identified for this specific view, and invoice will be created for that view. So just enable this lookup so that these attributes can be mapped to business unit, save and close. So the next setup is send image to imaging email ID. So I will send the image now. Let me open my Gmail. So suppose I am the supplier. Okay. So I am the supplier and I have this email ID. So this is the imaging email ID. What I'll do, I'll copy this email ID and I'll send the invoice copy to the business. So I'm the supplier and in subject line you can mention invoice number. Okay. So what is the invoice template? So you have to send the invoice. So I have created one invoice template here. I can show you. So better you can create the invoice template in PDF or it can be a scanned image. So supplier here is ABC Consulting. Okay. And this is the invoice number and this is the invoice date. Okay. So this invoice I will attach and send to this imaging email ID. Okay. So let me attach this email ID and send. So what is the invoice number? Invoice number is 31850. In the subject I can mention this. Okay. And send this invoice. Okay. So I have attached this invoice. Now I'm sending. So this step is done. Okay. So we have done our setups. We have set up our profile values and lookup and send the invoice image to this imaging email ID. And now the next step is verify the invoice in imaging web center. Okay. So what is imaging web center? So this is the imaging web center or web center content where all the invoice sent by the supplier will be stored here. Okay. So you can send, the employee can send the expense report or supplier can send the payable invoice. So search for the invoice with the invoice number. So how can we navigate to this web center? Just what you can do here, you can just copy this URL. Okay. If you copy this URL till oracledemos.com and suffix this with imaging. Okay. So this will navigate you to this imaging web center, right? So just search for this invoice. This is the invoice number. So it should be available here. Just wait for some time. So it should be available after some time. So now you can see the invoice here. Okay. So you can see the invoice in. So it is stored in this web center content imaging. You can verify the invoice if you want this PDF copy. If you open here, you can verify the amount, the invoice date, invoice number, suppliers, etc. Okay. So here you can see the invoice copy here, and you can, after verification, you can send this invoice to Oracle. So how you can import this? You can go to Invoice Workbench, Tool, and Schedule Process. And from Schedule Process, you can run this program, Invoice Import Program. import payable invoice. Business unit, US1 business unit. Ledger is US primary ledger, and the source is important. The source should be invoice imaging or invoice image, and submit the program. So wait for the program to complete. The program should complete successfully to import the invoice. So you can see we have completed all our setup here. We have sent the invoice to Web Center and imported the invoice to Oracle AP. So now you can verify the invoice. This is the last step. Okay. So verify the invoice and validate the invoice. So either this invoice will be in incomplete status or not validated status as per your setup in IDR option. So let us see the invoice is available or not. The program is still running. So once the program is completed, yeah, so now the program is completed, and this maintain intelligence document recognition service for payable. So this is a child program. It will trigger once you import any invoice from invoice image. Okay. So now you can go to invoice dashboard, invoice workbench, and this invoice should be available now. Not yet, the program is not complete. Otherwise, you can see here in the scanned image section, at least one, 0 to 7 days, you can see here one invoice is available. So let us, the program is still running. Yeah, import payable invoice report. It is another child program. And yeah, so the complete program is now complete. Yeah, so the program is now complete. Go back to this dashboard, search the dashboard. Okay. So you should able to see the invoice image now. Yeah. So you can see here our invoice number is 31850. Let's open this, and the supplier is invoice ABC Consulting. Open this invoice and verify the information. Yeah, so once you click this invoice number, by default this invoice image also will be opening. Okay, just close this, and you can see the invoice status is not validated. So you can verify the details, invoice header and line information. So you can say the tax amount. So the tax is calculated during the import program, because we have mentioned, we have enabled the checkbox calculate tax during import. So that's why the tax is calculated here, and the invoice amount including tax is 5588. So it should be 5588 and 62. Just change the amount in header also, so that to avoid any line variance hold. Okay. So now you can validate the invoice. Validate the invoice. Yeah. So invoice is now validated. Okay. So in this way, you can get the invoice, import the invoice which supplier sent to image through invoice imaging tool, and process the invoice for payment. Okay, so this is the end-to-end flow. If you have any question, any doubt, you can comment in the comment section and share and like our videos. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching this video.